afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. It's Alyssa Corum and Ed Carson here with a look at what happened in this trading session. Ed, it was a bit of a quiet day, but that doesn't mean there's nothing to talk about. We have an interesting setup we're going to check in on and a couple of lessons that the stock market is currently presenting us with.
That's right, Ali. Iqvia is looking pretty attractive, setting up nicely, while SM Energy had a disappointing breakout, and Palantir still remains on the weak side despite today's gains.
All right, well, let's take a look at the major indexes, starting things off with a look at the S&P 500 via the SPY ETF. The S&P down about 0.8% for the day. Same for the Dow, and the Nasdaq was down about 0.6%. The Russell dipping into negative territory at the close. So it looks like maybe a little bit of a weak finish here, Ed. But going back to the daily, we're still right around the 21-day line for the S&P. So not a whole lot of damage or scenario change at this point, given today's action.
Yeah, I mean, it was disappointing to see the market close sort of at session lows and right at the end, and we faded off sort of throughout the afternoon. So it wasn't great, but it's not that meaningful by itself, especially for the S&P and Dow, which you say they're closer to the 21-day line. They're a couple days away from hitting all-time highs. We'll just have to see as it goes on, but both of these things are still looking relatively strong. Nothing too concerning there. I mean, so the concern is more on things like the NASDAQ, which actually was up for most of the day, then sort of faded into the close. Actually, as you can see, it's delayed there, and it was positive on this thing, and then it faded off. The Qs looked worse for much of the day because it's really beaten down names that were leading the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ still below its 50-day line. The 21-day line is getting close to undercutting the 50-day line, which is a bad sign for that power trend. You want to be living above the 21-day and the 50-day. You want all the moving averages stacked in the right way, and we're just not seeing that right now.
Yeah, this is what the power trend looks like in a good trending market. And we're not seeing that for the NASDAQ and many of the technology stocks, as you mentioned. But let's take a look at some individual names that are getting our attention for various reasons. The first of which is Iqvia. Today's stock of the day trading nice and tight in the medical sector here. So we have actually a 4 weeks tight pattern, Ed. Iqvia down about 1.6% for the week, but it's looking like a pretty interesting setup.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's like it's got accelerating growth. Technical action is strong, trading tightly. The relative strength line is right at highs. So a stock that's sort of consolidating that tightly, it's not losing ground, especially with the market sort of going choppy. This is really nice action. If it can get above the top of this little area, that would probably be being a buying opportunity. And just a lot of nice things about it right now.
Okay. Well, we will have to see if it can break out of this tight action. That would be a compelling entry point. And as you said, that relative strength line is quite strong. But elsewhere, we saw a breakout here, Fizzle for SM Energy, ticker SM. Still gained about 1% for the day. Volume pretty heavy here. Gapped up in the early going, not on any news, but this is just showing the difficulty of breakouts that we're seeing in the current environment.
Yeah, I mean, breakouts they're not working very well. I mean, and then in this case, it was especially odd because it surged on no news that we could find, and other energy stocks weren't moving. In fact, crude oil prices and natural gas prices, they were down today. So honestly, there didn't seem to be any real catalyst for this move. So I wasn't a real surprise that this one came down to, but even if it weren't, that sort of weird, weird no news move, breakouts just aren't doing very well. And there's just so many times a stock will move out like this and then just sort of fade. Sometimes it's because of the market, sometimes it's not. And it's just tricky to be buying stocks right now.
But given the strong industry group that it's in, both the relative strength line and the relative strength rating, very solid here, some volume behind the move. What would we want to see from this point from SM Energy to maybe put it back on a list where we would consider it to be a good risk reward ratio there, aside from a breakout that, as we saw, resulted in a bit of a squat type action, as Mark Minervini would say.
Yeah, I mean, if it followed up and broke out tomorrow, then you look, hey, look on a weekly chart. It's had this strong gain. It did rise today. It did rise yesterday. So it's not like on a weekly chart, yeah, it doesn't look great because it's off that, but you could easily see all of a sudden on a weekly chart, it would have this nice action. So it could certainly happen. It's just a tricky environment. And that's just, that's one of the problems. It's sometimes if you want to get into breakouts, you probably want to tiptoe into them or pullbacks, tiptoe into them. Maybe they'll work. But if they don't, then you just singed your little toe and you can back out. And it's just, but you don't want to get away from the market, but you want to just, if you do step up your exposure, to do it in a very limited way.
All right. Well, what about exposure for recent or, relatively recent IPOs? We had Palantir, ticker PLTR, out last fall, had a huge move out of the IPO. It has a compelling story here. Investors may be thinking, oh, it's found a bottom. I can try to get it on sale here, well off of that 45 level that it once hit at the beginning of the year. What do you think about that, Ed? That's definitely not our style of putting the odds in your favor.
That's not our style. I mean, look, it's not unusual to see little bounces. It doesn't mean that they're going to continue. I mean, it may continue, but it's still below the 50-day line. And you can look as you're drawn, like those are little places where it bounced up, looks like it's gaining some momentum, runs up towards the 50-day line, and then it fizzles out. Now, even if it gets above the 50-day line or even gets up to 28 or so, gets above some short-term levels, it's still well below the record highs. I mean, this is just, it's probably going to take months for a stock like this to recover. Now, it could rebound faster, but it's like the odds are not in your favor. It's still sort of in this downtrend. It hasn't broken that. It's just not a situation. I know people, it's exciting. These stocks do move up when they move up, but boy, they move down fast too. And so you just have to look at what is actually leading the market, not was a winner last year.
Exactly. We're not trying to catch the exact bottom. We're trying to put the odds in our favor. And history tells us that the strongest stocks are in uptrends. They will form some sort of consolidation or pullback and launch big moves from there. So we like looking for those types of setups. And maybe one day we'll see that with Palantir. Who knows? But it'll take a while. Like you said, there's a lot of damage to this chart. And in the enterprise software group as a whole as well, which is a bit disappointing because so much great leadership came from that group last year. But as we were saying on IBD Live this morning, who would have thought that we would this year be focusing on oil and gas stocks? There was a time where in the not too distant past where those were really out of favor. So that's why we like to keep track of sector rotation.
Yeah, I mean, if I had told Chris Kessel, our chief content officer, said, Chris, we should really focus on fertilizer, oil, and and some other stocks like that, maybe miners, he would have looked at me like I was crazy. But we have to pivot to what's actually working, and those are the kind of things that are working, and this has not been working.
All right. Well, we're going to stay focused on what's working, and to reiterate the ways that we do that, we look for that industry group strength, stocks and uptrends, and those relative strength lines hitting highs. And even still, it's been a tricky market. That's where we fall back on our rules and make sure that we're taking profits when we see them and making sure our losses don't get out of hand. But we'll leave it there for now. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. The conversation, of course, is going to continue tomorrow morning on IBD Live. We hope you join us, where we will have special guest Brian Shannon of Alpha Trends, a great technician. Can't wait to get his analysis and perspective as he joins us. So make sure you are there, investors.com/IBD Live. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.